Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. Today we're diving into a truly disturbing and unexplainable story. One that feels like it was ripped straight out of a horror movie. But this isn't fiction, this is real. Imagine being a police officer and walking into a house that just feels wrong. A house where a young woman became obsessed with a Ouija board, convinced she was talking to a spirit who wanted her to join him. A house with a dark past, a past tied to a doctor who met a gruesome self-inflicted death. But it doesn't stop there, because what happened after will send chills down your spine. One by one, her entire family met their tragic fate in ways too eerie to be a coincidence. And now, years later, something or someone may still be watching. If you love creepy, mind-bending stories that make you question reality, you're in the right place. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and every single one of you makes that possible. All right, turn down the lights, grab a blanket, and let's get into this terrifying tale. I was a police officer, and I think I witnessed an actual curse. I used to be a police officer in a city in Virginia. There is one upscale neighborhood in our city with very nice homes. I was always told stories when I was a new officer that there was a doctor who used to live in one of the homes. The story goes, the doctor attempted to perform some type of operation on himself. He numbed his stomach area to make an incision on himself, but since he couldn't feel it, he accidentally cut far too deep and large and accidentally disemboweled himself. When officers and paramedics arrived, he was found barely alive, holding his own intestines, and ultimately died. Fast forward, I was assigned a call about a young female who was found dead by her older sister. When I arrived on the scene, it was in the aforementioned nice neighborhood. When I exited my vehicle, I immediately had an uneasy feeling about the house. While nice on the outside, it just had bad energy surrounding it. As I approached the front porch, I noticed countless empty energy drink cans and a Ouija board on the front patio table. Everything about this house just felt wrong. When I was let inside, the family was obviously very distraught. I was told the deceased sister, we'll call her Emily, was in the basement. At this point, another officer had arrived also, and so he stayed upstairs with the family as I entered the basement. The basement was unfinished and was fairly dark, minus 2 pull-string light bulbs, one on each side of the basement. The scene in the basement was similar to the front porch. Energy drink cans were everywhere, and another Ouija board was on a small coffee table. Emily, who was 19 if I remember correctly, was hanging by her neck on a basement rafter. She had hung herself with an exercise band and was swinging back and forth slightly. Her face was blue, bloated, and contorted into a horrible expression. Another officer helped me lift her to bring her down. Emily's family consisted of her mother and father and her older sister. Her parents stated that they had been trying to help her because all she ever did was drink the energy drinks to stay up all hours of the night, playing on the Ouija board. Her sister gave a little more detail about it. Being sisters, she stated they were very close and told each other everything. Her older sister said Emily indeed had been obsessed with the Ouija board, drinking energy drinks to stay up all night and talk to what she believed was her boyfriend, who was dead. Her sister stated Emily had been saying that her boyfriend was begging for her to come join him in the afterlife, and so she believed that is why she did what she did. Now let me reiterate, this house felt wrong. Everything felt bad, and I had a very uneasy, sick feeling being in the basement, and not because of the dead body. It wasn't my first. This is a call that really messed with me for a while. We really never got much more explanation, and as cops, you kind of just have to move on to the next call. 2 weeks later to the day, I got a call about a car accident with ejection. I headed to the call code 1, lights and sirens, and arrived to find a convertible BMW with the top down, which had experienced an obvious horrible crash and rollover. It was sitting on its wheels, and in the driver's seat was a woman who clearly had a broken neck, as her head was almost all the way turned around. Next to the vehicle, about 25 feet away, was a man who had been ejected. Keep in mind, this was a convertible, so he was ejected from the top of the car. He was missing the entire top half of his head, and there were pieces of brain everywhere. I went to close off the scene with yellow tape. I walked about 75 yards away from the accident, where I found yet another large chunk of his brain. I'm not trying to be intentionally graphic, but I want to paint the picture of just how bad and violent this car accident was. Upon obtaining the man's ID, I read the information off to dispatch, and then another officer and I both realized the same thing at the same time. These two people were Emily's parents, who, 2 weeks to the day, just died in a horrible way. Breaking the news to the older sister was heartbreaking. I kept in touch with her for a little while. She had inherited her parents' estate and all of the life insurance money, etc. She ended up selling off everything and buying a different house to try and start over and repair her broken life. However, it doesn't end there. Around a month later, another officer was called after a pedestrian was struck by a car while she was jogging in her neighborhood, and yes, you guessed it, it was the sister. She managed to survive several weeks in a coma, but ultimately did not make it. If you're wondering why the story about the doctor is relevant, the house that Emily killed herself in was the same house the doctor lived in. I don't know what you guys think, but to me, it definitely seems like either that house is cursed or Emily opened up something bad. That was a few years ago now, and I am no longer a police officer. I moved a couple of states away. Twice now, I have found 2 different Ouija board planchettes on the sidewalk when going to check my mail. I never touch them and usually use a stick or something to push them into the storm drain. My family met a ghost and interacted with it for years. Ask me anything. I grew up in a very old house in the Midwest that my parents got for a steal. It was originally built as a hotel, and the seller was very motivated to get rid of it. Growing up, weird little things happened all the time. The typical malarkey that is easy to ignore for years and years. Footsteps, strange shadows, gurkasi, the feeling of being watched or followed. Swearing you see someone in the room right as you wake up. The room in the basement that chills your blood every time for no reason. The occasional hard-to-explain moments. I moved to the West Coast in my 20s for school and self-discovery. During a visit from my family, my sister told me that they had met a ghost in the house. I was pretty skeptical, but my entire family backed her up. She was in her room, and her radio had been acting up. So just on the off chance, she said, "Okay, if you are a ghost, could you just please stop it?" The radio turned off. She waited a moment and then said, "Wait, if you are a ghost, turn it on." And the radio turned on. After some experimentation, they devised a system of communication. Volume up was yes, volume down was no. The digital readout on the volume was 0 to 30, so 1 was A, 2 was B, 3 was C, and so on. If the radio turned off, then it was a sort of hard no or an off-limits question. Through this system, the ghost had explained that he wanted to be called Jason. He had died in the house in 1905 at age 5 when he was sick, and he lived in the house alongside us with his kind mother and evil father. When they asked if he loved his father, the volume went to 0 and turned off. In fact, he refused most questions about his father. Apparently, he was the cause of the more malevolent experiences that people had in that house. I was definitely intrigued and went back home that year to visit for a chance to experience this for myself. However, when I arrived, Jason refused to interact with me. I would leave the table and the radio would pop on. My sisters would call me back and the radio would turn off instantly. He didn't want to have anything to do with me. As I thought about this, I remembered an experience I had before moving to the West Coast. I had been lying in bed one night when I felt a hand ruffle my hair playfully. I freaked out. I shot out of bed, turned on the light, puffed out my chest, and overconfidently yelled, "You don't know who I am or what I'm capable of. If you try that again, you'll regret it. Don't you dare mess with me." And then several picture frames on my desk flew off onto my floor belligerently. I stayed at a friend's house that night. One night on my trip, after Jason refused to talk to me, I spoke out loud, hey, I'm sorry if it was you who I yelled at that one night. I bet you were trying to play or introduce yourself to me, and I got scared. I didn't need to be so mean to you, and I understand if you don't want to talk to me." The radio turned on. "Hey, are you the Jason I have heard so much about?" The volume went up. "Did I yell at you that night before I left?" The volume went up again and then went back down to a reasonable level. "I'm sorry about that. Can we be friends?" The volume went up again. It was incredible. He had introduced himself to several family friends as well. To prove he wasn't some sort of hacked radio, he would do additional tasks. He would ring our doorbell. He would push crayons around on the table. He even did a really incredible trick for us. You see, while asking about the logistics of being a ghost, he had volume upped that he could travel anywhere almost instantly. To test it, we called up a family friend on the West Coast. This friend put out a newspaper on their kitchen table. Jason then visited them and came back to set the volume to the date of the paper. The radio turned off for a moment, then seconds later, it set the volume to 17. The friend said, "So close. The paper was for the 18th. But Jason was not convinced. Volume up, volume down. 17. Volume up, volume down. 17. 17, 17, 17. The friend checked again and apologized. "Oh, he's right. I misremembered. It's the paper from the 17th. He refused to answer any questions about God or religion. He gave us a few answers that contradicted as well. He told us he didn't need to sleep, but he had told my sister a few months earlier that he did. One thing he seemed to know was how long he would be there. Through the volume Ouija system, he told my sister he would be around until her 28th birthday. Then his family would move on to the next phase. At the time, this was a couple of years into the future. Sure enough, we never heard from him after that. During his time with us, he would occasionally visit our dreams. We would have these extremely realistic dreams where a boy in a white hooded robe would say hi to us, ask to play hide and seek with us, or ask us questions about ourselves. Then he would confirm with my sister that he had visited us. He used the radio primarily, but in the final year, he got better at manipulating other electronics. He could make printers print messages, he could manipulate televisions, he even sent us texts in the last few months. My mother had texted me, "I see you, haha," when I was back on the West Coast a couple of years after all of this. I texted her back, "Did you come out here to visit? Where are you?" But she was confused. She said she was in the Midwest at home, and her phone had no evidence of sending a text with that message to me. I texted back, "I think Jason sent me a message. Hi, Jason." And I got a reply, "Hi," again, not from my mom. My sister even once got a call with a picture of Obama and the caller ID saying, "Mr. President," but there was nobody there when she answered, and apparently no callback number. The radio confirmed with a volume up that Jason was goofing around. It was a wild few years with that crazy kid haunting our devices. My family still has that radio out just in case, but it hasn't turned on in years. My sister is now well into her 30s. I know this will be met with a lot of skepticism. Even I was very skeptical until I was able to meet him myself. However, I think it's finally time to share this and to answer questions people might have about it. So what do you got? Ask me anything. Thanks for the questions. I will try to respond to more questions later on. I will follow up with my family for a few of those answers that I mentioned specifically and get back to you with an answer. Some FAQs. Does my family still live in the house? Yes, they do. My mom and sister are around. There has been no communication or experiences from Jason or the father since my sister turned 28. You realize Jason is a demon, lying spirit, malevolent entity sent to trick you, right? Maybe. We haven't ruled that out, but it felt pretty chill. Yes, I get that could be part of it. How did the parents die? It's unclear to us too. I wish we had found more info on them too. Why didn't you record it? Oh, we tried. Electronic recording was interfered with or glitched every single time. Jason didn't want to be recorded. Camcorders glitched back. Phone video didn't save or seemed to be immediately deleted. Even audio recordings didn't work around the radio when he was active. Did you ever investigate the history or death records of the house? Did a boy named Jason actually live and die there? We did. We found a record of a death of a 5-year-old boy from illness. His name was not Jason though, but everything else was in line with what he told us. How did a 5-year-old know how to read, write, and spell? Honestly, I have no clue, but he could. I personally always figured he had picked up some tricks in the afterlife, but who knows? Others have theorized that if his family had this property at that time, they might have been socioeconomically at the top of the class back then. He might have received a better education than most kids at that time, but I really do not know. You expect us to believe this crap? Where is your proof? I expect some will believe and some won't. That's fine. I'm not here to prove it. I just thought it was a cool experience and figured some others would enjoy knowing about it too. Please post pictures of the printouts of crayon drawings he left you guys. They aren't exactly very good proof or even all that interesting. That said, here is one drawing he left for our family friend. My dad bought a dress for my daughter, but my daughter was born 5 years after my dad died. I'm not sure I believe in the paranormal, but this experience is something that I think of often, and I would like to share it. My dad had me at 70, as usual as that is, so when I was 20, he was 90. He was sick and in bed, and we knew he was going to die soon. I used to visit him every day and stay with him all morning. At the time, his memory wasn't very good. He mixed up names and faces a lot. A week before he died, he told me that a while ago he bought me a dress and asked me to look inside his closet. His wife came to help me, my dad told us where to look, and we found a baby dress size 3 to 6 months. I told him he must have bought this for one of his grandchildren or as a gift for someone else. He insisted that I have to take it. He kept saying, it's for her, take it, which at the time I thought meant that it was for me, referring to me as her, as he maybe didn't know who he was talking to. That day, I told him multiple times that this dress was not for me. He refused to listen. I took it home and never saw it again. I probably shoved it in some drawer and forgot about it. My dad died. I moved out. I got married. Years passed. Last April, my daughter was 3 months old. I opened the closet to pick her outfit for the day, and the dress was waiting there, folded, ready, still with the label on. Our cleaning lady said she found it somewhere in the room and put it there. I honestly don't know where she could have found it, as last time I saw it was literally 5 years ago. It's even stranger that the dress only showed up when she was already 3 months, which was the dress's size. I was the one who packed everything when I moved out of my mom's house, and I was the one who packed everything again when we renovated with my husband. Never saw the dress apart from the day my dad gave it to me. And I know it might be foolish, but I think it was for her, as insane as it may sound. I think the dress was for my daughter. I've witnessed 2 people die suddenly, 15 years apart. I saw the same thing leave both bodies. When I was 16, my sister and I were walking home for lunch, a half block from the high school. A girl in my younger sister's class was driving someone's car in the parking lot, doing donuts. It appeared the girl in the front passenger seat was scared and wanted out. The door opened and she was pulled under the car. The driver must have thought she was still on top of her, ended up backing over her for a second time. I knew she was dead. Then I saw what looked like refractive light combined with mist or fog. That is the best I can use words we have to describe it. That ascended up just above the car and then it was gone. My sister ran down to call 911. I was dry heaving in the ditch. I'm extremely sensitive to other people's pain, so witnessing a person ran over twice and be gone was overwhelming. I wondered about what I saw a few times that summer. Never told anyone, didn't think I'd be believed. It was a long faded memory by the time I was in my late 20s. My BFF was driving my car to drop me at SeaTac for a business trip on the old HY99 viaduct. We came up on an accident that had just occurred, motorcycle versus SUV. The SUV was on its side, wheels facing the bay, and a woman was having a panic attack. Another woman was kneeling by the motorcyclist, reaching for a pulse. I saw the same refracted light and foggy but transparent particles move up and away from him, then disappear just as the woman sunk her head down. I interpreted as no pulse. What could it possibly be but a soul or a quantum group of particles from the elements of a supernova that gave us life, returning to the fold? This isn't the only experience I've had that didn't have an explanation based in our current understanding of quantum physics, chemistry, biology, any of the sciences, but it's one I have witnessed twice under similar circumstances. So it would be difficult to explain it away as a reflection of some light bouncing off metal or other anomalies. My dad crawled out from under my bed. I was around 6 when it happened. My parents had tucked me in for bed. I live in the rural countryside, so nighttime is very quiet, no sounds of cars. It's usually very peaceful. I was laying on my back when suddenly I heard the sound of long nails scratching the wood under my bed. The reason this incident sticks out to me is because I can still remember the feeling of my heart dropping out my stomach and feeling paralyzed with fear. I was about to call out for my parents when my dad crawled out from under my bed and stood up in the dark looking at me. He said, "You forgot to say your prayers," then walked out of my room. I was understandably shocked. I did not leave my bed afterwards and must have fallen asleep at some point. My dad would normally tell me to say my prayers before bed, so this seemed like something he would say, but I have no idea what would possess him to hide under my bed. My dad denies ever doing this. I brought it up numerous times over the years, but he has never admitted to doing it. I never really considered until recently that he definitely doesn't have nails long enough to make the deep scratching sound I heard. What do you guys think? Maybe I fell asleep and had a vivid dream. I also considered it could be something paranormal. Edit. Thank you all for your input stories. They were very creepy themselves. To answer a few questions I saw frequently. No, I can't remember if I asked my parents about the incident the next morning, but since then I have asked repeatedly over the last 20-ish years, and my dad has never owned up to it. I believe at this point that my dad couldn't have done it because, 1, my dad likes scary stuff and would absolutely take credit for a prank that scared me so bad. 2, my parents had been gone from my room for probably about 10 minutes before I heard the scratching. It's possible my dad could have stayed behind, but he could not easily fit under my bed without me noticing. 3, he's not really a drinker, so I doubt he was passed out on the floor. I'd like to believe it was sleep paralysis like many of you theorized. However, that would be my one and only time experiencing sleep paralysis. There's definitely a chance it could have been something more sinister, and it's something I hope to never encounter again. My dog passed 4 days ago, and for the past 2 nights I've heard her walking around my room. My dog passed away 4 days ago, and for the past 2 nights I've been woken up by the sound of her little nails clicking on the wood floor in my room. The first night, I woke up my husband, and he heard it too, though the sound quickly disappeared. On the second night, I heard it again around 3 a.m., but this time I chose not to wake him. Instead, I let her roam and pretended to be asleep, and it lasted about 30 minutes. I even recorded the noises and shared them with my family, and we all truly believe it's her. We miss her so much and have been completely devastated. We've had her since the day she was born, and she stayed with us for 14 wonderful years. Thank you everyone for your comments, and thank you to those who also shared their experience. It's a relief to know I am not alone, and that many of you have also had visits from their fur babies. My family members have vivid dreams of her, but my husband and I seem to be the only ones hearing her in my room. I absolutely do speak to her. I let her know that I am thankful for her time with us and that we love and miss her dearly. I let her know that although we do miss her, it is okay for her to go and that we will be okay. We understand she has to go, and she will always remain in our hearts. I did leave her favorite bed and things with food and water in my room. I think she knows we know she came because I was not woken up last night. I hope her soul rests and that we meet again one day. Appreciate you all, sending those who also lost a loved pet my thoughts and prayers. Saw my deceased friend and colleague, nurse, at work one night shift. I had a wonderful, kind friend who I worked with for a few years at a large hospital in San Diego. She loved her job and came to work with a big smile each night shift, often in pink scrubs and a high ponytail. She was a joy to be around and sadly diagnosed with leukemia and passed away 2 years later. About 6 months after she passed, I was walking down the hall of the hospital unit we worked on. It was probably between 400 a.m., and I would often walk the halls to get some exercise and stay awake. When my friend was alive, she would sometimes take a nap in an empty patient room on her lunch break. As I walked that night, I passed by an unoccupied patient room, and as I passed the door, I realized that a woman was actually inside the room sitting on the hospital bed wearing pink. It took me a second to register that, but knowing that there should not be a person in that room, I walked back to check out the room, and for the briefest moment, I saw that it was her. sitting on the side of the hospital bed in pink scrubs, ponytail, big smile on her face as if to say, "Hey, just checking on you all and hoping the night is going smooth." I called out her name, and then she was gone. I immediately started to cry and rushed to the nurse's station and told my colleagues. They all thought it was her, and that of course she would show up at work because she truly loved it. This was honestly reassuring to me, and I think to my colleagues, because we knew how much she missed work in the 2 years she was ill and unable to be there. This is a happy haunting and cemented in my mind that there is another realm we just don't understand. Did I meet God in a hospital elevator? This happened several years ago. My husband had just undergone major surgery, and 24 hours after he came out of theater, my brother-in-law was murdered. Needless to say, it was an incredibly difficult time in our lives and very traumatic. I had to go to the hospital the morning after it happened and break the terrible news to my husband. After doing so, he wanted to be left alone for a little while, so I went for a walk around the hospital corridors to try and find the chapel. It was a big city hospital and difficult to find my way around. After consulting a hospital map, I realized I was on the wrong floor, so I got into an elevator nearby. Just as the doors were about to close, a man walked into the elevator with me and smiled gently. He was of Middle Eastern appearance, well-groomed and gentle-looking. The conversation we had went like this. Him, "Good morning. I noticed you consulting the map. Do you need help finding your way? I'm looking for the chapel, and I think I'm finally heading in the right direction. Thanks. Did you know that during times of great pain, if you take 1 step towards God, He takes 10 steps towards you?" I did not. What a lovely sentiment. Thank you. The lift doors opened, we exchanged pleasantries, he went his way, and I went mine. The thing that stayed with me was this man's peacefulness, grace, and gentleness. He seemed to sense what I was going through and said the perfect thing to get me through those difficult days. He felt almost divine, like how I imagine an angel or God to feel like. So what do you think? Was he God, an angel, or just a kind person sensing my pain? Used the Ouija board with my GF and her brother came through. That's Ouija board experience. I had a very unsettling but nice experience with my girlfriend. It was just me and her. Her brother, who hung him, showed up. We asked who was with us, and the pointer spelled his name M. That's what he went by, short for a longer name. I asked how old M was, and M said 17. That's how old he was when he hung himself. Things got heavy in the room. I wasn't sure if this was really happening. I got nervous and said, "Well, nice to meet you, man. Sorry it's through such a weird circumstance. I'm your girlfriend's boyfriend." The pointer spelled out, hi. Then very quickly the pointer went directly to Y and then Dad. Why Dad? My girlfriend's dad died a few months ago. This gave me the absolute chills. It was like he was asking, why did he die? We asked him if he was in a spirit realm on Earth, and he said no. We then asked if he's somewhere outside of Earth that's a nice place, and it pointed to yes. We asked if he was with his dad, and the pointer said no. We asked if he was somewhere else, like a heaven, and the pointer said yes. I asked if there's anything he wanted to say. The pointer spelled out, "I'm sorry." The pointer after that went, "E be okay." E is the name of my girlfriend's brother, and B is my girlfriend. My girlfriend asked if he was asking if her and her brother were okay, and it went to yes. She was crying, and so was I. She said she was okay. I asked if there was anything else he wanted to say. It spelled out, "I'm sorry," one last time, and then went to goodbye. Daughter sees purple man person in her bed and outside quite often. Elf fairy. First of all, not sure if the flare is correct. Mods, feel free to change it. Hi. My daughter is almost 3, and she's been telling me on several occasions that she saw or talked to the purple man in her bed. It started with the green man in my bed a few weeks ago, but now the purple man is the one that's visiting her almost every night. When I ask her what he looks like, she says he's purple, then uses her hands to show what he looks like. She gestures at a thin and elongated face and then uses her hands, actually the back of her hands to cover her eyes, to describe his eyes' face, kind of like the pale man from Pan's Labyrinth, the movie. We've never seen or discussed this movie since she was born, but I've seen it a few times well before she was born, so she couldn't pick it up from us. Our child does not watch a lot of TV, maybe 20 minutes once every 2 weeks. We read a lot of bedtime stories, books, and short stories, but nothing comes close to the color or description. When I ask her what the purple man does to her, she says and shows that he touches her on her shoulder. She taps her own shoulder multiple times in a row. When I ask her what else he does, he talks and talks and talks and talks. But she also says that he's nice to her, even though she wakes up screaming, crying quite often. A month or two ago, she also said she saw an angel with a little baby, and she described what she saw as well back then in more detail. When I asked what that angel and the baby looked like, she mentioned that they were red and with a long stick. But then she immediately also mentioned, but also another blue man with longer stick. She then made the sign with her hands, going diagonally from left above her head to the right towards her feet. I had to search quite some time for the things she was describing, but then I found a few pictures of the archangels and showed her all of them. But she didn't really acknowledge them much, except Michael too. Then I showed her this picture that I found online. She got really excited and immediately said, blue man, and a red man with little baby, and pointed to Raphael and Michael. When asked about the other two, she said no. Mind you, we are not Catholic, we don't go to church, we don't talk about angels or God or anything like that. We don't suppress any creativity or other ideas or religions either. We're quite open to everything. On other occasions, she's been saying that a man is outside of the house/window. She sleeps on the second floor. And she says he's always talking to her a lot. During the winter times, she said he was outside in the snow. She doesn't really see them downstairs, only in her room. And when asked if they're still there, she points to her bed and guides me to the location where this purple man is in bed. Sometimes I exaggerate and move way out where she thinks it is, and then she corrects me. I know kids this age have a great imagination and perhaps can also see things that aren't visible to us. I do find it interesting that she can name these details, gesticulate so accurately, and describe what's what. Our child doesn't have any grandparents and doesn't sleep over at other people's houses. Visits are always done with us. She's rather sensitive and picks up on emotions and feelings quite well. I'm really interested to see what others think about this. To me, this seems like a combination of a few visits things together. As mentioned before, we're open to anything, but the fact that there's something in her bed with her tapping her shoulder is worrying me a bit, even though she said it's not hurting her and it's a good person. Nothing happened in my house until I brought my baby home from the hospital. Haunted house. So I bought my house in January of 2023. It's a brand new build, so first owner. Nothing spooky happened until I gave birth in July of 2023 and brought my baby home. I tell these stories a lot, but I've only made a Reddit post about my childhood experiences, so I figured it's time for these. I was home alone while on maternity leave, and my baby woke up for a bottle one morning. I left the room to go make it in the kitchen, and all I hear is a deep man's voice saying something super quick, like one word. Then my baby stopped crying. So I finish making the bottle, and I walk in the room, and he's staring off, as babies do, lol, but happy as a clam. I said, "Thanks, Ghost Man," and went about my day. That story is the birth of what we call Ghost Man in our house. I don't spook easily since I grew up in a haunted house and lived at my neighbor's haunted house after high school, so I'm used to it. But my fiance gets scared easily. We had one of those Graco swings for our baby, and one night while my fiance was feeding our dogs, the Graco swing turned on by itself and started swinging, lowest level, but still freaked him out. We hadn't used that swing in a few days, so I know it was turned off all the way. Another instance with my fiance. We bought one of those motion sense baby monitors for the nursery, but at this time, the baby was still sleeping in a crib in our bedroom, so we didn't use it. The camera was in the nursery and the monitor was plugged in at my fiance's desk, so we could test out the range. One day, I saw it was fully unplugged from the wall, and I asked him why. He said the motion sensor kept turning the screen on when nothing was in there, so he got scared and unplugged it. He said, "Not today, Ghost Man." we quickly realized Ghost Man was obsessed with our baby and his nursery. So fast forward a few weeks, my fiance's parents visited and stayed in our guest bedroom, which is right next to the nursery. At this time again, the baby was still sleeping in our bedroom. So we all were sitting on the couch one morning, and my Phil asked how we slept. I said fine. He said, "Really? I heard you guys in and out of the nursery all night." Me and my fiance looked at each other, super confused, because we knew neither of us had to go in there for anything that night. I told my Phil it wasn't us, and he got very serious and said, "No. I heard one of you walk over there, open and close the door, and rummage through, and then leave again at least 3 times." We were like, "Sorry, dude, it's Ghost Man." I have quite a bit more, but this is already long, so if anyone wants to hear more, I can add. Activity has died down the past few months, but still happens every once in a while. Being haunted by my very alive husband. Curious to know if this has happened to anyone else. Without going into too much detail, I used to live in a house with my ex-partner who was emotionally and verbally abusive. He made the house extremely tense, with his fits of rage followed by days and weeks of silence. Most of my friends stopped coming over because of the energy of the house. I mean, you could feel tension just when you walked in, but I was very used to it being his wife. I had my first occurrence in the first house we shared, which was a late 80s Cape Cod. I moved in after we got engaged, and for the first 6 months, everything was great and normal. Sometimes my dog would bark incessantly at the end of the hallway at nothing in particular, and I'd pick up on some old house creaks. Eventually, we got married and continued to live there while looking for a newer home. When my husband started a night shift job, things changed. While still in the Cape Cod, we began to argue, and he would follow me around the house yelling at me until I solved things by apologizing and catering to him, and we'd move on. His attitude became hostile, and I began my career of walking on eggshells. Things were fine as long as he was happy. He was happy as long as I had meals made, a clean house, brought home money, didn't see my friends, let him do whatever he wanted, left him alone, didn't look upset or unhappy, didn't talk too loud or too quiet, didn't move too much in my sleep, did his laundry, color-coded his clothes when I put them away, all facing the same direction, didn't try to talk to him before dinner, right after dinner, and definitely not in bed. You get the gist. The first night I saw the shadow figure, I was home alone, and he was working. I woke up in the middle of the night to him on his side of the bed, holding what looked like his cell phone. I could see his shoulder outline and the screen from the phone. I was surprised he was home early, but did not want to make him angry by asking about it, so I pretended to sleep. After a few minutes, he hadn't moved at all, so I reached to grab my phone and checked the time, 3-something a.m. I turned over to him as I asked if he was okay, and he was just standing there looking at me. I could see his outline, his ears and shoulders. It was like he was darker than the darkness. He was just standing there. My fight or flight kicked in, and I immediately took my pillow and threw it at him, grabbed my phone, and ran out of the house. No one had broken in. No one was in there. I didn't sleep that night. Fast forward a year to the new house. I mean, new. My ex had money, so a new Ryan home, cookie cutter built for us in a residential neighborhood. At first, little things would happen. Lights on and off, TV acting up, all ignorable. He had become worse, harder to appease, and harder to understand. The silent treatment would last weeks, and there would be such intense tension from the two of us that it was heavy. One night at 3 a.m., our fire alarm, in our bedroom only, went off. Later that week, my girlfriend and I were in the living room, and we heard running upstairs coming from no one. I have no kids, my dog is always glued to my hip, and my ex was sleeping. Things went on like this. Lights would flash on and off, items would move around or get completely lost, the TV would come on in the middle of the night, and also our house was struck by lightning, twice. Towards the end of the marriage, when his abuse was bordering on violent, I saw his shadow again. We had had some sort of fight the week prior, and he had pulled silent treatment ever since. Again, he was at work. I woke up in the middle of the night to footsteps at the foot of the bed, and when I opened my eyes, the exact same shadow was on his same side of the bed. The odd thing this time was, it was definitely him, but he had short hair. It looked like the shadow of him from our time at the older house. My ex at that time had grown his hair out to his shoulders, so I knew it wasn't him. But it was him, staring again from his side of the bed. In my sleepy, worn-down best, I ignored it and went back to sleep. I felt like it wasn't me that thing was directed at. I wouldn't say I felt safe with it, but I just knew the darkness wasn't mine, if that makes sense. This is way longer than I intended, but is anyone familiar with being haunted by the living?